In After Effects, where we are going to finish our scene, we need to start by just importing the render. So that's just double clicking anywhere in the project section and then finding our sequence. Doesn't matter which frame we pick, as long as a PNG sequence is ticked and we import, it's going to bring in the whole frame range. So this is what we have for the main regular image. We of course have all those multi-pass layers, so they are in this folder for me. And these two can be opened either one by one. You click the frame you want. This might be easier if we go to View and List, for example. You see all the various sequences in here. You can pick any frame from any sequence, and if the sequence is ticked, it's going to bring in that particular layer. If your machine can handle it, you can press Ctrl and A at this window, but it may freeze for a while. Anyway, so I have all these selected, and multiple sequence must be ticked for this. And if I click Import, it's going to haul in all of those sequences and automatically set up the right layers. It took a while and nearly froze again, but here are those sequences. Let's go to the first one and go to Interpret and Main. And what we want to do here is assume a frame rate equal to our project in Cinema 4D. So that was at 24. And I'm going to click OK. Then I can right click, Interpret. Remember the interpretation, and then select all the others and paste it the same. So now all of these will be the same FPS. We can bring the main image sequence to the new comp button. And that's what this is going to look like. So I just like to keep this here for reference. And there's two approaches to this. One is I can use the multi-pass layers to add on top of the original render, or I can reconstruct the original render from the multi-pass layers completely. So if we bring in ambient, for example, start with that. I also need the reflection layer, so that's multi-refold here. It seems I rendered specular by accident. You see it's blank because we don't have any specular materials. So that was unnecessary. But we have reflection in the comp now, so we can set the blending mode of that to add. And if this menu is different, press F4 to change between the two types of menus. So here we go. So that's combining these two layers. This could also be set to screen. It's going to look slightly different, but works all the same. Let's get our Atmos, which is the volumetrics layer, and this can also be screened on top of the image. Now, if we were to compare the original render with our combined layers, you'll see that there is a slight difference. Maybe if I put the Atmos layer to screen, it's a bit closer, but it's not going to be exactly identical to the regular render image, but it's close enough in this case, and I think we can continue with the reconstructed layers completely without even referencing the original. Let's also save this file just to make sure we don't lose any progress. I'm just going to call this city comp. And another very important thing is that your color management for these important frames needs to be the same as whatever you're working with in Cinema 4D. So if I go to this button over here and go to Set Project Working Space, you can see right now I am using the display color management anyway. So Cinema 4D uses the display color management by default. So this looks how it looked in Cinema 4D, and that's very important. If I wasn't using the display color management and I go to the set project working space option. This is currently using sRGB for me, and that happens to be my screen's profile at the top here. But there is a whole host of other options that you could pick from. And a common one might be, let's say, Adobe RGB, right? So we choose that, and you'll see that's going to give us a completely different set of colors. So if you bring in your renders and your different layers into After Effects and realize that it looks completely different, it could be because of that color management is different. So you would either use your display profile, or better go to the project working space and use that actual profile as well. And that's going to give you the right look. One more thing to do with the color profile settings, let's also make sure we are using 16-bit, which is the same as the bit depth we rendered out from Cinema 4D. So one of the things I wanted to do to this render was I wanted to emphasize the glowing headlights on the cars. Right now they're quite hard to see. So that's why I outputted a mask just for the cars alone. And what I did was I brought in the ambient layer, which is just the luminance, and then combined it with the mask for the vehicles. And for this we need the track matte menu. So once again, if it's not there, press F4 to reveal the track matte menu. With the mask above the ambient layer, we can go to the ambient layer and change this to Luma Matte and point to the mask above. And now if I solo this layer, we can just see the vehicle. And if I enable the transparency grid, you can see that's what we are getting. Okay, so let's unsolo this and pre-compose both of these layers together. And let's call this the car lights. And how I did the glow on the vehicles was using the trapcode star glow effect. I can quickly show you how to use it in this example. So we enable it on the layer. The preset I'm going to use is red, and the input channel is going to be the lightness. Let's go to the streak length. I'm going to drop this down to 10. But in pre-process, let's go to the threshold and drop this down so that the effect is stronger and more obvious. We can boost the light by about 10 as well. And that's how I was able to get these lights glowing. That might be too strong though. I also changed the transfer mode to none, but I went to the actual layer itself and set this to screen to be on top of the original render. So this is before and this is after. So the headlights will be the brightest parts, but even on some of the rear tail lights, you get some streaks coming off of that too. Anyway, I thought that was a nice detail. It makes it easier to see the cars, and especially at the lower level where the cars are in the fog between their buildings. I also applied some glow to their buildings. So once again, the ambient layer and the buffer for the buildings was number 4. Let's use the same Luma Matte setup. Pre-compose these, and this is going to be building lights. On this, I am going to use the same effect. So trapcode star glow. I'm going to use the red preset once again. We can leave it as light. We can leave it as lightness. That's fine. I will go to the transfer mode and set this to none. And then this layer is going to be added on top of their buildings. And that's how I got this hot glow effect on the edges of some of the buildings. Now it's much stronger right now, so let's change it a bit. The strength I'm going to drop down to 10. It makes it narrower. That's the raise. And then I'm also going to press T for the opacity, and let's drop this down to about 40%. So it's not too strong, but it just creates this highlight on the brightest parts of the image. We can maybe go to the pre-process here and just bring it down to about 100. This is on the threshold, just so it glows on more of those surfaces. So this is before and after. On top of everything, we can create an adjustment layer. And I'm going to start with a standard glow effect, so effect stylize and glow. We can increase this threshold, but go to the radius and increase that. It's just going to create this diffused glow effect on top of everything. Maybe dial it back for a stronger effect. We see the fog in between the buildings starting to get brighter. About 50-55 with a radius of about 100 to 150. It's quite subtle, but I think it's a nice effect. I'll get an instance of our fog layer and let's add this on top. We can blur and sharpen this. Fast box blur. It's going to diffuse the fog effect once more. Let's repeat the edge pixels to get rid of the dark edge. But this is only going to have an opacity of about 40 or so. I don't want it to be too strong. So just continuing to use the different layers to construct the final look. And this is only possible because we have those multiple layers from Cinema 4D. Finally, we can have the color adjustment layer. This is going to be color correction and lumetri. My favorite way to adjust my colors. I'm going to warm up the temperature to about 25 and the tint maybe about the same. That puts in more purple into the image. I think that's too much, maybe about 10 instead. The exposure we can do 0.5 or so just to brighten everything up a bit. And in the creative section, I started with the sharpen about 25 just to make those edges pop a bit more. That might be too much, maybe drop down to about 10. Then we have some curves adjustments down here. We can start with the red channel. I pulled this down to make the shadows cooler. Then I raised green, but not by much. And the same with blue as well. So in the blue channel, maybe about halfway between the green and all the channels together. With all the channels combined, we can boost the highlights. Do the classic S-curve to create more contrast. And I'm also going to fade the shadows just a touch. From here, we can go to the vibrance, maybe do about 20 there. And saturation, 120. It's going to really make all these colors very vivid. Much like this final example you see here. Further down, we have these graphs. I like the hue versus hue slider. It allows me to change the tone of my colors. So if we just put a couple of handles either side of blue, we can pick blue in the middle and make some adjustments in either direction. So we can make it more blue this way or go in the other direction to make it more teal. And because the original image was rendered at 16-bit, we have a lot of latitude what we can do in After Effects. So I would leave it around here somewhere, maybe darken it a bit with the contrast. But I just wanted to show you what kind of process you can get in After Effects with all those layers combined together and applying various effects and so on. I never just leave a project how it was in Cinema 4D. We always have to make a few enhancements and finishing touches in After Effects. It's all part of that workflow.